15 minutes max. I'm at a truck stop in New Jersey.
Okay, well, you sound
on my way to a gig.
You sound like a very busy man.
We've been pretty busy. It's been pretty nuts the last few months.
Yeah. Okay.
Pretty crazy.
Well, Dave, there are basically two things I want to ask you.
Oh, that's easy then.
Yeah.
I don't even care what the two things are. Two is easy.
Yeah. The two things are, why do you call yourself the President of the United States, and what is the meaning of lump?
Oh, see, those are two easy answers because there's no answer to either of those questions.
No, that's a joke.
Oh, that was a joke. That was extremely funny. That was very funny.
I was just reading. Where was I reading that? On the internet. There's an online magazine called Addicted to Noise.
Sure, yeah.
And it says the two things you're asked most often are why you call yourself the President and what does lump mean.
Right, it's true. I think I did that interview, actually.
Well, the thing is, there actually are a couple of questions like that in here, and this is the first article this magazine is running on you guys. It's the biggest selling music magazine in Japan.
Great.
Anyway, it's basically of a very introductory nature.
Okay.
So if we can get a couple of answers on your background, I think that would probably be
certainly
pretty helpful.
Certainly.
Let me see.
I was born a poor black child.
to sharecroppers in Mississippi.
Right.
You guys use very unusual instruments.
We use guitars with strings on them. Yeah, there are not as many strings on them, and they're in open tunings, which is not really all that exceptional in the world of rock and roll today.
Do you have a glib and impressive answer as to what you have done away with and what you've added to your sound as a result of narrowing it down to 2 or 3 strings?
Well, the beauty of it is it's simplicity is freedom, basically, right? Especially where this is for a Japanese audience. It's a Zen thing. By simplifying, you are more free.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's true of our instrumentation. Certainly, our instrumentation is not it's not the MO, it's not the modus operandi for the band. It just happens to be the tool that we've been using so far.
Mm-hmm.
And we may continue to use that, or we may, you never know. With next record, maybe all keyboards or something. Shit, I don't know, but I doubt it. It's simple. We like that, and it, sonically speaking, we don't have any high ringy, unwound strings on our instruments, and Jason doesn't have any big crash cymbals, which means that the sound is fairly mid-range, low mid-range, and tight, and doesn't, most importantly, particularly live, doesn't compete with the vocals. There's plenty of sonic space for the vocals to be intelligible, which is really important to us. And that's true on the record as well, but live, that's really important. And of course, we started out, like most bands do, as a live band, and never really even expected to be making any records. So that was one appeal of that initially.
That's interesting, because the vocals are often the first victim of bad mixing.
Oh, but you go see most rock bands live, if they have 2 guitars and a drummer with a lot of big crash cymbals, all that ring from the guitars distorted, and the from the cymbals, and the vocals, if they're in the sort of, upper, if they're in that sort of tenor, alto range, which they usually are, if there's a male singer, then it's all competing, and the vocals just get lost.
I guess by coincidence, maybe not by coincidence, you have worked with Mark Sandman before.
Chris worked with Mark Sandman, used to actually live with him off and on. We're all from, Jason, Chris, and I are all native Seattleites, but Chris lived in Boston off and on for 4 or 5 years. And
I see.
He and Mark lived together a couple summers, and they had this sort of jam band called Supergroup. That's actually where Chris started playing this 2-string bass contraption. He got it from Mark Sandman.
Which we tend to identify with Mark. Was that Mark's idea, or did Chris turn Mark onto that idea? Or
I don't know where Mark got it. I mean, it's a not uncommon. There are other 2-string and 3-string. In the world, Mark's really into I guess you call it world music, which is a total misnomer. But he's into a lot of music from other cultures that are not North American and or Northern European, and I'm sure he either found it or came upon it or, co-opted it from some influence such as that. That's my guess, anyway.
So the Sandman connection has influenced the presidents.
Definitely. I mean, I just met Mark a couple months ago. We were in Boston and we played a show, and he came and sat in with us, and that was the first time I'd met him or hung out with him or played with him. But obviously, it heavily influenced Chris, and Chris and I have been playing music together for years. So,
more background trivia. Who toured with Beck?
Chris toured with Beck.
Well, Chris also, okay. I wonder if these questions were intended for him, because the way it works is I'm provided with a list of questions by the magazine.
Okay.
And,
I'll just make up funny answers, so everything will be fine.
You can pretend you're Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't...
I prefer not to.
Okay, so I guess questions on Beck are out then. We shall talk.
Well, you can ask questions about Beck, and I can make up completely fictitious.
Well, let's keep this on the up.
What do they want to know about Beck?
They were just wondering what they liked about touring with Beck, and what's wrong with the guy, or what's right with the guy, and I think just choice little bits of gossip to dress up the interview a little bit.
Hey man, it's about the music.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Here's my answer. My answer is
integrity. That's pure integrity.
I don't know if this will translate. It's Beck Schmeck. That's.
Okay. Well, good enough. You guys all hail from Seattle.
We all hail from Seattle, and actually, Jason Finn invented grunge music.
I knew
he did. That's not a joke. I mean, it's just funny, but.
I knew that.
He was in Skin Yard, which was one of your original grunge rock bands with Jack and Dino, the producer who invented grunge.
No, would you mind enlightening me that?
Jason took over Matt Cameron, the drummer from Soundgarden, when he left Skin Yard to be in Soundgarden. Jason took over drums in Skin Yard, which was one of the first grungy bands, along with Green River and Soundgarden and all those kinds of guys.
And how about yourself at that time? Were you were not into...
What was I doing then? I was going to college, working. Getting a degree in English and American literature. And then teaching English to recalcitrant high schoolers.
I see. So music was not high in your
well, it still was. I was playing music all the time. I was always... When I was teaching, I taught for 4 or 5 years. I always played music with the kids, and I always was 4-tracking and playing in other bands and stuff. But, no.
Well, did that whole sort of Seattle hype explosion thing mean much to you at the time?
I moved away from Seattle in 1985, and I moved back, in 1989, and that was sort of all the build-up hype was happening while I was gone. And I came back, and Alice in Chains were happening, and Soundgarden had their first record out on A&M, had just come out, and it was just building up. So, and then Nirvana happened, 2 years later, and I don't know, it's pretty weird.
But you don't see yourselves as being part of that chain of events? Are you removed from that, or?
I think certainly. I mean, that who knows if all the circumstances that led to us being a national or international recording artist would have happened if all those other things hadn't happened first. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we were just playing around Seattle and fucking around, and Jason was in his other band, Love Battery, and who have toured Japan. And, he was signed to a major label, and we just had this fuck-off band. I was in graduate school, and Chris was doing stuff, and we just played shows, and, I mean, we didn't send a demo tape to anybody or anything, but we just happened to play this show that a bunch of industry people came to, an ASCAP showcase, and we had no idea it was a big deal, and, all those people probably wouldn't have come to this ASCAP showcase in Seattle if Seattle hadn't spawned Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Nirvana, The Posies, Pearl Jam, Screaming Trees, in the 5 years prior to that.
So you just sort of benefited from the hype that was surrounding it?
I don't know if we did. I mean, if anything, now that's a disadvantage, I think, to be a band from Seattle. I don't know. I mean, we're so different than any of those bands. And aside from Jason, neither Chris nor I, while we know some of the people who are part of all that, we weren't a part of that scene. I mean, Jason is a scenester extraordinaire in Seattle. I mean, he knows everybody and everything. But Chris and I are really, we're not part of all that. I wasn't living in Seattle at the time. I left before it all started.
Personally, what was what kinds of music were important to you when you were developing?
I used to listen to a lot of, 70s radio, top 40 rock music. Even though I didn't necessarily buy the records, that was probably the most important. Everything from, the Jackson 5 to Bread to the Grand Funk Railroad to Stevie Wonder to, top 40 radio in the 70s was so great. It was so eclectic and the best of every genre. And then as I started to become more educated, I guess when I was a young teenager, I started listening to a lot of blues music and then all of a sudden there was punk rock, when I was about 12 or 13, 1978. I bought the first Sex Pistols record, and after that I was always simultaneously, I was buying, Clash records, Buzzcocks records, Sex Pistols' first record, like that, and then buying records like Muddy Waters and Duke Ellington and Oscar Peterson and all sorts of blues and jazz players. So lately I'm really into country music. Willie Nelson is my favorite right now.
Really?
Yeah. If I had to choose, like 3 records to take to a desert island, I'd probably choose like a Willie Nelson record and maybe like a Booker T and the MGs record and a Muddy Waters record, Beatles record. Excuse me. I'd take Rubber Soul. Would definitely be in the top 3.
How old are you right now, Chris?
I'm 31.
31. Okay. All these lyrics about peaches and cats and worms. What exactly is the significance of these metaphors?
I think that Chris writes most of the lyrics, and I think he just purged a bunch of childhood daydreams that he was repressing for years. Because he's written, for the last 10 years, he's written great songs, most of them about boys and girls and that kind of stuff. And he always just had these dopey childhood things in the back of his head, and they just happened to come out in the last year and a half, 2 years.
The imagery is not that important, though. It's more of a phonetic type of approach to it.
The imagery is important, not necessarily in terms of creating a linear story or thought, but in terms of creating a mood. And then, it's about sort of a non-linear image and the phonetics, how the words trip off your tongue. That's the most important thing.
There was a specific question here about feather plucking. The last line about everybody supernova.
Yeah. There's this great band, Supernova, from Costa Mesa, California. Actually, one of them's right across the room. We're touring with them for the next week, who we just started referencing in our song because we liked them.
Is this like a guy that made the question seems to think it's a rock anthem of sorts?
That song?
Yeah.
I would be wonderful if somebody considered to be such. Everybody Supernova was just, we're obviously copying the end of I Got a Feeling with the Everybody Had a Good Time, and that used to have an even bigger cop in it that we edited out because we knew we were going to get sued. And that was just a way of defusing the ripoff, the Everybody Had a Good Time ripoff, so just say Everybody Supernova instead.
Wait, you're copying what? I Got a Feeling is whose song?
The Beatles song, yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
Everybody had a wet dream. Everybody let their hair down. Everybody had a good time. Oh, yeah.
What about these references to you as post-Green Day? Is that a rather nauseating
Oh, I could give a shit. I mean, this has been we just get up and play music and we make our records, and there are all these levels of fabrication and construction that sell magazines and keep the whole sort of band, label, live show, music press complex rolling along, Everybody pats everybody else's back and creates movements that generate money and business and interest, and sell tickets, sell records, sell magazines. I really could give a shit. I like Green Day. I think they're great. They're no buzzcocks. Let me tell you, they're no fucking buzzcocks, but I do like them.
Uh-huh. Well, this guy just seemed to think that they sort of have tongue-in-cheek much of the time, and he thinks that you have your tongues-in-cheek as well.
Yeah, I don't. That's one thing that with them, and even more so with us, is I find sort of baffling, is that it's so weird that pop music would be fun and cheeky, which up until the last 20 years, that's what pop music was supposed to be for the first, for most of the 20th century. I mean, even if you look at the Beatles, I bet every third or fourth song, 20 to 30% of their songs are joke songs on some level. Have some funny tongue-in-cheek joke that's the premise of the song. For example, "Help" is a brilliant example of that. I mean, this upbeat pop song that has the most incredibly morose lyrics. Or you can take the obvious ones like "Obla-Dee, Obla-Da" or "Bungalow Bill" or "Yellow Submarine." I mean, that's pop music, entertaining people, having a laugh. And some songs, not everything's about that. They also recorded "Helter Skelter" and those songs, and there are songs in our record that aren't necessarily. I mean, "Lump" is not a funny song, really. The words are kind of macabre, and "Naked and Famous" to me which is my favorite song on the record, is a very bitter, sarcastic song about how fucked up American culture and the Sunset Strip is in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And at the same time, this fellow notes that your live performance is also supposed to be very impressive. Somebody who had seen one of your shows said that it was quite possibly the best, or at least the second best show he had seen this year.
Next to Bruce Springsteen.
Next to Bruce Springsteen, of course. I guess we are to assume that live performance comprises a large part of your overall approach.
We're better live than we are on the record, for sure. I mean, live we just go for it. And we just get up there in our shorts and our shirts, and sometimes, and just go for it. I mean, just put out as much as we can.
Which means that I guess you guys couldn't survive without that buzz from the live.
That's what it's all about. I mean, this band started out as a live thing. We started out without Jason, no drummer, just Chris and I, and it was almost kind of a weird, goofy cabaret thing, borderline. And now it's just an over-the-top rock show. And it's really funny, the whole we've gotten a lot of joke band, novelty band shit in the press lately. That was never even an issue until the record got distributed widely and people knew the record before they knew the band. I mean, before that, everything was based on our live show, building up a following in the Northwest, and then getting courted by record labels. We had a little tape, but mostly they just knew us from the show, and it's rock and roll. Get up on stage and scream and play and leave everything on stage when you're done.
Here's an off-the-wall question. Did you like My Sharona by The Knack?
That was a fucking great song. Dude, their problem was...
What's that?
Their problem was they only had one really good song, and they had 2 or 3 mediocre singles after that.
Uh-huh.
And that was really too bad for them. I'm excited because there's more good singles on this record, and our next record I think is going to be even better, and it has just as many songs that are just as catchy. So I'm hoping that the strength of the songs will continue to help us ride along.
Does the term rock and roll, do you have any problem with the term rock and roll?
I'd have no problem with the term rock and roll. I dislike the term rock. I like rock and roll. I mean, when I get up on stage, I want to be like Little Richard, or like Chuck Berry, or like Jerry Lee Lewis. You know, that's the kind of show I want to put on. I don't want to be Pink Floyd, you know.
Does Eddie, just read these questions as they come along, by the way. Eddie Vedder, does his approach to what he does resonate with you at all?
I've seen those guys a couple times. Once when they were Mookie Blaylock in a little club, and then recently last year at a private theater show in Seattle. I think he's a stud. I mean, he has true intensity when he performs, and I admire that. And you know, his Pearl Jam's now perceived as this very serious, you know, sort of semi-intellectual band, which I don't think they are at all. At least, I mean, they were some guys from Seattle, at least the one I know, who wanted to be rock stars. And Eddie Vedder was, you know, he was nuts. When the first 2 years they toured, you know, he was climbing around in the rafters and crowd surfing and, you know, putting on a show. And now that they've gotten the kids' attention, they're laying the heavy shit on them, you know. But you have to be an entertainer first to galvanize the public, I think.
He's still pretty manic, though, isn't he? I mean, not exactly.
Yeah, he you know, when I've seen him, he's not a manic in the sense that he's all over the stage, but he's a damn good singer for one thing, and he's into it. You know, I used to be a teacher. And when you're a teacher and you walk in the class, the kids know within 10 seconds whether you're for real or not, you know, whether they can trust you. And I think the audience senses the same thing in a performer. You know as soon as they come out and launch into the first song whether they're sincere or not. And I perceive him to be totally sincere.
And lastly, it says here, another one of our off-the-wall questions here, but nonetheless, Bill Clinton was supposed to have been our first rock and roll president, a person who was brought up in the age of rock and roll.
Sure.
And yet at his inaugural ball or party or whatever, the bands that showed up were not exactly what we would call cutting edge. What would you characterize as the major differences between you and him, rock-wise?
Oh, no difference. I like Fleetwood Mac, too. I'd say he plays the saxophone and I play the guitar.
Just a mere difference in instruments, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and the guy was also asking if you guys weren't worried about being assassinated.
Being what? Actually, you know, that's really funny that you mentioned that. I kind of started to freak out about that a couple weeks ago, and think this could get really weird.
Why is that?
I mean, you know, there's a lot of really fucked up, crazy people in America who have really high-powered rifles, and with the name that we have, it's kind of setting yourself out as a target.
You think they're going to want to take out a president, huh?
I know. I was reading something about Hootie and the Blowfish the other day, and it said that the singer Darius Rucker gets bomb threats like almost every show.
Really?
Yeah.
Christ almighty.
So it's pretty weird.
That is weird.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, and I guess lastly, do you have any plans of coming out here?
Yes, we're planning to come to Japan sometime before the middle of '96.
Before the middle of '96.
Yeah.
And that will be preceded by vigorous touring elsewhere, I assume?
Non-stop, except for January when we're making a record.
Meaning touring across the United States and Europe and...
Europe, we're finishing up the U.S. right now. We're going to Europe for 2 weeks in December. Then we're touring the West Coast again at the start of January. Then we're going to Europe again in February. Then we're spending 2 more months in North America in March and April. Then after that, probably Japan, Australia. You know.
These are headlining gigs, or are you?
Right now we're headlining bigger clubs. Yeah. I don't know what it'll be like in the spring. Maybe small theaters.
Mm-hmm. All right.
All right. I should get going. You got everything you need?
I think so.
Great.
Well, I thank you very much and wish you guys the best of luck then.
Thank you. We'll take all the luck we can get because that's an integral part of having any success in this business. And that was good talking to you.
Yeah, same here.
All right. Bye, Steve.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.